our interpretation of what drives Iago, I guess, is a bit different from maybe your typical understanding of Iago. But I have to say, before we even went into rehearsal or into workshops of it and everything, I had read it. I had reread it again, and just started seeing and hearing and all these things in it that kind of made me not understand a lot of the typical ideas of Iago without even discussing it with Peter or anybody. It seemed quite clear his affection for Othello was as profound as his resentment, and that they actually are hand in hand, and that it's not just being passed over for a job. That's the tip of it, and because of what that relationship is, and the idea that he says so many contradictory things, and the idea of thinking like, well, I wonder which ones he actually believes. Do you know if you start to tilt it on its head and all the things he says that make people call him Honest Iago all the time? What if actually those things were true too? Do you know what I mean? Because I started thinking like, how can you be a convincing Iago if you're not convincing? Do you know what I mean? I just started looking at this back. I'm like, how did these guys play this part and not believe the love as much as they believe the hate? How'd they do it? I don't know. I mean, because I don't know how you would convince somebody as important a man as Othello, who's come so far and done so many things of what he does in this play, without actually believing what you're saying, and not just as an actor or as somebody who's so filled with hate that he can, magically say these things and convince somebody and act so well that he. But so I started to look at it that way, that, what if the things he said that earned the title Honest Iago are actually true too? And his relationship with Othello being one that's centered on a need for him and not a need to hurt him. And what would that mean? And his relationship with Emilia, that one isn't, that the idea of the fact of when he talks about leaped into my seat, is it not just a thought he has that he's keeping at bay, but is there actually some truth to that? And that Emilia is actually struggling with that truth too. I mean, what if those things, it seems to be in the play to me. It doesn't seem to be a made up thing, and I always go back to Emilia when she talks about, that she would cuckold, and she would, because then it would be her world. And in her world, she can be punished in her world because it's her world. It's kind of like, what? She says that, how can a woman who's not, if there isn't more to what that issue is, to what Iago is bringing up pertaining to her infidelity, why would she say those things that she says? And you start to wonder, and I guess that's how I've been looking at Iago, is trying to look at those things and the way I've just discussed them, and it has opened up a whole world that it's not, that these things aren't so much premeditated as somebody who's actually, because of the storm that's inside him based on all these things I've just been discussing, is compulsively making it up as he's going along, and he can't keep, I think there are many moments in the play where he actually wants to stop, and then somebody says something, or something presents itself, and he can't help it, and he keeps moving, and that's a very, I think a quite actable thing, So
he's suffering.
He's suffering, but it's but then that poses the next question. It's like, well, a lot of people are suffering. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people probably go through these. Definitely, a lot of people go through this kind of thing in relationships in their life. So why is what makes Iago Iago? And I think that goes back to the idea of saying I'm not what I am. And the idea, and what does that mean? Because I think you immediately think, well, I'm not what I am, is that he's going to put on the good face, but there's the bad face behind it. But it actually can mean the opposite. You might actually think that I'm somebody who's doing these things, in fact, to the audience. You might actually think I'm somebody that's doing these things, but I might actually not be that guy. you know, and that's kind of also an interesting way to start to think about it, you know, that he's having a conversation not just with the people in the play or with himself, but he's opening it up as discussion to the whole experience of the event of the evening. Is everyone you're watching right now, everything you're seeing right now, is it what you think it is? Are the people you see in your life what you think they are? Are the events you're seeing and reading about and listening to and watching what they really are? And I think Iago is definitely bringing up that problem. And he's saying, I'm not satisfied. I'm just not satisfied with the fact of like coming to an opinion or a conclusion about something just because of what I just see or hear or read.